Navigating the streets of Montreal is a notoriously chaotic undertaking. Prince Edward Street, with its dense flow of pedestrians, streetcars, and traffic, demands absolute attention. But for Pierre Dupin, the chaos barely registered. Every morning for 30 continuous years, Pierre drove a milk wagon down this exact street, serving the exact same families. For the latter half of his career, he didn't do it alone. His partner was a massive white horse. Pierre named him Joseph, after the saint, because of his uniquely kind and patient demeanor. When you repeat a highly specific sequence of actions for decades, the daily grind strips away all unnecessary movement, turning manual labor into a highly refined, flawless routine. That routine started exactly at 5 o'clock. Pierre would load his wagon, hitch up Joseph, and climb aboard. And from that moment on, Pierre never actually touched the reins. This map shows their exact morning route. Joseph took complete control, pulling up to the first house without a vocal command. He allowed Pierre exactly 30 seconds to deliver the milk, then moved forward on his own, executing the route perfectly. The stable foreman, Jacques, often watched them leave. He noted that the two of them always seemed to share a quiet chuckle, communicating through a language that required 0 words. Their workflow had surpassed the need for instruction, functioning instead as a single synchronized entity, a machine operating on muscle memory and absolute trust. Of course, 15 years of hauling heavy glass bottles on hard pavement takes a physical toll. Eventually, Pierre's mustache turned snow white, and Joseph lost the high-stepping gait of his youth as his knees grew increasingly stiff. Pierre developed his own physical quirks to manage the strain. He started carrying a heavy walking stick, gripping it tightly as he moved, and he took to wearing a thick cap with the peak pulled securely over his eyes. The dairy company's management noticed this visible decline. Acknowledging his spotless 30-year record, they offered him a full pension, allowing him to retire gracefully while keeping his salary. To the foreman and the company executives, the walking stick and the stooped posture were standard, inevitable signs of an old man slowing down. They had no idea these traits were actually masking a far more desperate dependency. Pierre fiercely rejected the offer to retire. He told Jacques that he and Joseph were 2 old men and that they desperately needed to wear out together. He would only leave when the horse was ready. This was a true symbiosis. Each partner drew a hidden, reciprocal strength from the other, just to make it through the morning route. While hitched to the wagon, both man and horse appeared capable and vibrant. But the second the shift ended, Pierre would limp heavily down the street, suddenly looking incredibly frail, while Joseph would drop his head and drag his hooves back to the stall. Still, Pierre loved to brag to the stable hands about his partner's skill, often repeating the claim, "A blind man could do my job with Joseph pulling the wagon." His refusal to leave the street was a vital mutual life support system. If you severed the connection between the two of them, the entire structure would collapse. That collapse arrived on a completely ordinary morning. Jacques walked up to Pierre with devastating news. Joseph had not woken up. He had passed away in his stall at the age of 25. For a draft horse, 25 is a deeply advanced age. It roughly equates to 75 human years. Pierre, as it happened, was exactly 75 years old. They had hit the exact same biological threshold. Jacques gently patted his shoulder, promising they would find a new horse and teach it the route in a month. But he stopped talking when he finally looked close. Underneath the low peak of the cap, Pierre's eyes held a terrifying, lifeless emptiness. Before Jacques could tell him to take the day off, Pierre turned and walked away. He stumbled numbly down the pavement, stepping directly into the path of loud, fast-moving morning traffic. There was a blaring horn, the sharp scream of heavy brakes, and a massive delivery truck struck Pierre. With the sudden removal of his partner, the invisible protective barrier that had surrounded Pierre for 15 years vanished instantly. He was left entirely exposed to the world. As a crowd gathered around the still figure, the truck driver frantically tried to defend himself. He protested that the old man walked straight into the vehicle, acting as if he couldn't even see it. The ambulance doctor knelt down to examine Pierre. Looking closely at his face, the doctor noticed thick, advanced cataracts covering the old man's eyes. This timeline illustrates their 15-year partnership. Looking at the final block, the doctor turned to Jacques in disbelief. Pierre Dupin was completely blind, and based on the medical evidence, he had been for at least 5 full years. The medical reality recontextualizes every habit Pierre formed in those final years. The heavy walking stick served as a cane. The low-pulled cap shielded his unseeing eyes. And Joseph's precise 30-second pauses provided the exact window a blind man needed to find a front door and return to his seat. Jacques once thought they shared a private joke, but the truth was a 5-year pact of silence. Joseph had simply carried the weight of his partner's disability, navigating a complex city for a man who could no longer see it. It was an act of loyalty that required no words at all.